Hi, I'm Eric Naso with ericnaso.com, and yes, I am in the dark, but I won't be for very long because I have the Aputure Lightstorm LS1S hooked up. And well, let's just fire them on. Here we go. Boom. This is the key light. I have it shot through a Matthews road rag with a scrim, a silk. And then of course I have this cool light over here. This is the HR672S, and here it comes. Boom. So that looks pretty good, right? Now I had it all preset with the remote, which is like one of the coolest features on this system. Well, it's actually not the coolest, but it's a pretty darn cool feature because I sat here and remotely dialed in these two lights with just this remote. I just think that is the absolute coolest thing. I have a nice thing going on over here. I got about 65 IRE on my face, which is pretty good. I'm not shooting log, I'm shooting natural with the GH4. So I don't have a log mode on that camera, at least, well, not yet. Maybe someday, soon, Panasonic. So anyway, I'm looking here and false color looks pretty good. My waveform looks pretty good. Looks like I'm peaking at 80 in the highlights. Over here in my face though, looks like I'm right around 60, 65. So the false color and the waveform monitor are fantastic. So what is it about this Aputure LS1S that's all the talk right now? Well, let's just start right off. It costs like $695 for a light that basically outputs 1K equivalent of light. That is pretty darn good. Now, I have found that it does put out a ton of light and it is pretty close to a 1K. I did some comparisons to a 650 and it got pretty close to about like 60, 65 on the output of the remote. Because this is a dimmable light, it does allow you to set up different functions. And what I highly recommend is getting yourself a light meter and sort of figuring out what settings emulate some of your favorite lights. I kind of did that. Two of the lights I use are the 650 and the 300 Aries. So I kind of came close to their output, raw output. And then, you know, obviously different types of scrim you use, you can just, you know, figure it all out. So definitely get a light meter. It really helps. Those tools just, well, you know, they make us look good and make our lives easier, right? So, all right, let's just jump right on in here. Let's do the Aputure LS1S Lightstorm review. The LS1S is packed with LEDs. I mean, they really worked hard to get this many inside this little configuration. You can tell. I mean, the pattern's just a little bit off, but that's fine. It doesn't have to be, unless you're OCD or something, it doesn't have to have a perfect pattern. But you can really tell that the engineers, boy, they worked really hard to pack in those LEDs. I'm very impressed with the color output of the Lightstorm LS1S. They're rated at 95 CRI and they look great. This shot that I have set up right now, I'm shooting it with a GH4. It's the color temperature is set at 5500 K because that's what these lights are also rated at, and I think it looks really good. The build on the LS1S is fantastic. It is very, very high quality. There is no fan. It has heat sinks basically in the back that gets rid of the heat. It pulls it off, but it's really thin, so it keeps it light and portable. It's all metal construction. The only parts that are plastic really on the fixture itself are the knobs. One thing that could be a problem is the yoke gets in the way of being able to tilt the head down. So there's a couple of options. You could use a grip head and then have like a peg, a light peg, and then use that so that it can tilt, or just use the other option on the light mount where you can basically tilt it on its side and then put it in that way, and then you have the whole range more shooting down and then a little bit up. It could be a little bit awkward in this position and slightly front heavy, so I would use a C-stand or at least put a sandbag on a light stand so it doesn't tip over. The power connections are solid, really, really solid. They use Limos. These are Proline. A lot of LED lights put the battery mount on the back of the fixture. Well, although that's convenient, it also adds a lot of weight to the LED fixture. Now with the Lightstorm LS1S, they put it on its own little remote, which is great because now the remote, which has the dimmer and the DMX, and the AC adapter, and it also has your battery mount on it. All of that on one nice tight little package with a leash. Now the leash allows you to hang it from the yoke or the stand or wherever you want to hang it. It's nice because you can get the light well up above 6 feet, 7 feet, well, basically above your head, and then you can control it at eye level. This is really great. The dimmer dial works great. It's easy to dial it in. It's not super touchy. You've got a nice turn ratio there. It's very easy to dial it in. When you're using batteries, I got a good hour at 100%, but it did start dropping. So at 100%, you're gonna get about 20 minutes of just pure output. It'll stay at the same foot candle setting that it had when you first started it up. But after about 20 minutes, it starts to dim slowly. Every 10 minutes, you lose roughly about 10 foot candles. So just be aware that when you're shooting with battery power on the LS1S, that you're gonna wanna have a little headroom. So I wouldn't use 100% and then light accordingly. I would use 60 or 70% to give yourself a little bit of room so that you can bump it up. And again, you should use a light meter when you're using the battery pack because, well, the light is gonna dim on you over time, and then your lighting is gonna change. So if you're gonna use the first part and then you're gonna use this the last part and it's shot over 25, 30 minutes, well, you're gonna have a slight different look. So just be aware of that, and it's probably best in that situation to basically, I would just use AC. But you have 20 minutes, roughly 20 minutes at 100%, and probably even better at 60%. You'll have a little bit longer play before the light starts dimming on you. Good news is when you're using battery or you're using, say, like AC power, the output is exactly the same. Now, some lights don't do that. Some lights actually, when you're using batteries, they're dimmer than they are when they're using AC. So good news is the Lightstorm LS1S, they don't do that. Now, what I did was I took some readings at 6 feet. I figured 6 feet's a good usable working distance, especially if you're doing interviews, which is something I do a lot of. I do a lot of on-camera things with people, and my lights are generally a little closer in. So I thought, well, let's do a 6-foot test. And what I came to the conclusion was at 100%, at 6 feet, I was roughly getting 480 to 440 foot candles. So that's pretty good. It pretty much was kind of swaying back and forth between 480 and 440. Now you got to remember, this is slightly more of a spot than it is, a flood. So the distance in the middle is probably about a foot that you're going to have. And then it starts to drift from that center of the foot, at least from 6 feet. Now, as you go out farther, obviously the spread gets better. Now that's bare bulb, okay? So that's no diffusion whatsoever. At 60%, I was getting 270 foot candles. So that's pretty good. I'm happy with the output. I think it's really great. So let me give you a little example of what I'm talking about. Here's my Seikonic. This is the very good light meter. It's the L758 Cine. And what I did was I wanted to make sure, because I knew what exposure I wanted, so just to know, I'll put it up here in my face, and I'm getting 34 foot candles. And that was what I had measured and dialed this into, because that's looked good as an exposure. See, still 34. And then over here, I could do the same thing. It's a little bit of backlight, and get that. And that's 11 foot candles. See, so now I can dial these in, not by eye, but I can also dial it in with my light meter. And that works really, really well. So one other thing I wanted to mention is you have to let the light warm up a little bit. I noticed that it took about 2 minutes to get to full, value at 100%. And at 100%, it was basically 480 foot candles. That's pretty bright. And at 60%, it was 270. Now, again, even when you drop it, it seemed like say if you start at 100% and you drop it down to 60, just let it level out. I don't know why, it just does, but it levels out to 270. It'll fluctuate a little bit. So when you first turn on your light and you go to 100% and you're to take a reading, you're gonna go, whoa, it's like 170. You're like, what's going on? This is way too low. But it gets back up. It goes right up to 480 and then it stays there. 480, 440, kind of fluctuates a little bit there depending on where you're taking your reading. Here's something cool I found out. I went to ARRI's website and I found out that ARRI 650 put out about 290 foot candles, and an ARRI 300 put out about 121 foot candles at 6.1 feet. Now, and it was narrow beam, well, it was medium beam, not narrow. So it was medium, probably halfway, because this is more of a spot, and those are obviously have the option of going flood and spot. But nobody ever shoots at high spot unless you're really shooting something small. So I went to the medium-sized spot, tried to compare the two, and what's good about that is, yes, you just pull out your handy-dandy foot candle light meter, and then you'll know, well, okay, boom, I just hit it. Now I'm at close to a 650 output or a 300 output. Now, the good thing is, if this light puts out almost 1K worth of light, and I think the math kind of comes close because a 600 is basically 290 at 6 feet, and I was getting 480. So it's not double, would be like, obviously that would be 1300 compared to a 650, but it's pretty close. I'd have to say that these guys put out a lot of light. Well, that about covers it. The Aputure Lightstorm LS1S are really nice lights at an incredibly low price. $695 gets you a 1K output LED light with pro features, pro build quality, just absolutely fantastic. It's so versatile. I really think that it would work well in your kit. I know me personally, I want a couple more of these. They're just beautiful. And they make one that's a little bit smaller. It's about half the output. And I think I wouldn't mind having that too. They also work really well with your Amaron Aputure products because like I'm doing here in this review, excuse me, I'm using this light right here. This is the HR672S spot. I have that one set up over here as my fill. And they match perfectly. So you can, if you have other Aputure Amaron lights, they work great with them, right? Perfect. What more could you ask for? Great lights at a bargain price with pro build. Bam. Good job, Aputure. I'm Eric Naso with ericnaso.com. Thanks for joining me. Please visit the blog, and hey, let me know in the review. Let me know in the post what you think. Are you going to pick up a few of these Aputures? Do you have any of these HR672s or other lights that they make? Let me know. Thanks for joining me.